Welcome to the September 4th Planning and Zoning meeting of the City of Milford. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and a moment of silence, please. May I have roll call from the left?
John Grant.
Carl S. Moore.
Scott Marlowe.
Tom Panzella.
Denise Doucette Janice.
Robert Sandy.
Peggy Kearney.
Jim Quish. We have with us staff David Salkus and Matt Green. Thank you. Our first order of business is a public hearing. David, why are there no closed or expiration date on this public hearing?
Because these are board proposals, so there's no expiration.
Great, thank you very much. So we have two items here, proposal 3-18 and 4-18. David, if you could please explain those to the board.
Okay, the first one is proposal number 3-18, which is how we track them, which has to do with Article 3, Section 3.11.2, special uses, recycling plants. So in our regulations, we currently, the existing text is we define recycling plants, including accessory junkyards, provided any such junkyard shall be effectively screened on all sides by appropriate structures, fencing, walls, landscaping of suitable type and height. The board subcommittee recommended that we would add the following language: that all provisions required by Connecticut General Statutes 13A 123C through 13A 123I have been complied with. Upon further review and consultation with the city attorney has recommended not adding that additional language and keeping the language as is. And in my staff report to you, it goes into the details as to why the city attorney made that recommendation. But I don't want to read that report to you unless you want me to, but you should have it in front of you. So the bottom line is staff recommends not adopting the proposed change.
Thank you. Mr. Grant, would you get us up to speed on why we thought this was important to begin with and give your opinion?
The reason that it came up before the board originally is that the state statute number that was in our regulation was actually deleted out of the state general statutes and was replaced with a new number. So that's why this one is being proposed to basically just get reworded to include the new statute number rather than the old one.
So, David, is that your understanding too, that the original regulation did reference a state statute and that it was a state statute with a number that is no longer valid, and that the only housekeeping that this proposal would take care of is just putting the right or correct state statute reference number?
The problem is it's not the correct state statute number.
The one in this proposal is also incorrect.
Correct. But let me look at the original language for you. Hold on. Actually, the language we have under 311.2.9, it does not refer to any state statutes. So, so that would be what's going on. Mr. Grant may be talking about one of your other ones, which is the next one on the agenda that has a section 1467K. I think that's where maybe the confusion is coming from, because that's a number that we currently have in the regulations, which we'll talk about when we get to that one. But regarding this one, there are no current state regulations that have been existing in the regulations.
Are there any questions or comments from staff? Mr. Sadi?
Thank you. Going back to Mr. Sulcas' last comment, we're talking about the Connecticut general statutes, not regulations, so the general statutes.
Anyone else? Scott?
Just, if I remember, wasn't this brought up at a subcommittee meeting originally, and the idea was, I thought that, Mr. Sulcas, you had said that we didn't really have a lot of say in junkyards and such, so that's why we said, well, then maybe we should be putting in that the Connecticut State General Statute should be put along.
That sounds good, except that we don't have the ability to enforce those state statutes, so having them in our regulations aren't helpful for us. And in any event, the ones that were added to this, the city attorney said, these aren't even, if we even wanted to, these aren't the right things to reference.
No, I understand that. I was just saying what I remember the history of why this got to the way it is right now.
Any other questions or comments from the board? So we have, so that was sort of discussion on 318. What about 4? I guess when we open the public hearing, we'll be opening both, or is it two separate public hearings?
I mean, for clarity, you should do separate public hearings on each one. I mean, they're related, but I mean, for creating a record, they should be done separately.
All right, so then I'll open a public hearing on proposal 3-18. If anyone in the public would like to speak, please come to the podium. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Tatiana Murphy. I'm the treasurer of the Caswell Cove Condominium Complex. We're just here today because we are concerned about the recycling plant that is next to us and what's going to happen. And we don't want any, we want regulations to be all-inclusive so that we can follow the state statute and our laws so that we don't have a recycling plant there anymore. But that is not what you're talking about. You're just talking about changing the wording. Yep, okay, thank you.
Anyone else from the public like to be heard? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing. Any further discussion from the board or David?
Again, all I would say is I would recommend that the board actually withdraw this amendment and not move forward with, adding that language. Or if you want to take a vote to not add the language, that would be the recommendation. So as always, if it came time to do, either if you don't do the withdrawal, you would form the motion in the affirmative, and then you would vote against the motion if you were inclined to do so.
Mr. Grant, would you care to comment further? Okay, seeing it's here in front of us, I would entertain a motion. Again, the recommendation is that it's a motion in the affirmative, and if you're for the motion to pursue this, vote with the motion. If you feel like you want to follow the city attorney's recommendation, then you would vote against the motion. But I would hear a motion and see where it goes from there.
I'd make a motion to follow the city attorney's. Right. No.
Okay, I mean, I was asking to have it in the affirmative, and then people would vote against it, just because we've been advised that that's cleaner. Restate it.
Want me to make a suggestion? If someone could make a motion to approve the amendment as presented. And then if you're for the motion, obviously vote for it. If you're against the motion, because the city attorney is against the motion, then please vote against it.
So I make a motion to approve the proposal as submitted.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Panzella? All those in favor? All those opposed? Motion does not carry. So we have proposal 4-18. David, would you get us up to speed on that, please?
Okay. So this proposal is under section 10.1. We've been tracking it as amendment number 4-18. You were given, you approved a draft that went out to the councils of governments. It came back, and we have provided you this evening with a revised version based on language that the city attorney, after they reviewed it, believe would be more appropriate. And they took out language in there that, again, listed state general statutes, which we don't enforce. And then, let me just see something here. They also recommended, let's see, basically, if you have my staff report in front of you, you should have my staff report. In the staff report, it shows the existing text language, what the subcommittee proposed, and then the city attorney's proposed language, which is different. Sure. Originally, the subcommittee had approval of location. The Planning and Zoning Board shall determine whether a proposed junkyard location is suitable in accordance with factors specified in Section 14-67K of the Connecticut General Statutes. What the city attorney in their research discovered as anything related to automotive uses, which includes junkyards and automotive recycling, comes under actually the Board of Zoning Appeals. You may be familiar, because more commonly under our regulations we had what were called approvals of location, and we haven't had one in front of our board in a long time. One of the reasons is that the state legislature kept moving that approval of location between the Planning and Zoning Board and Zoning Board of Appeals. So the last time we updated our regulations, the Planning Board was the one who approved those locations. State legislature changed it again. It's with the Zoning Board of Appeals, and it's been with them now for several years. This particular section that talks about junkyard locations falls under the same area of the state statutes. So the city attorney recommends that we take the language that they proposed, which is approval of location. The Zoning Board of Appeals shall determine whether a proposed junkyard location is suitable, period. And put that, in section, I think it's staying in section 10.4, although, hold on. Actually, no. It's right now located, approval location, in section 10.4, and the recommendation is that we put it with the other one, which is in section 9. So it would actually become a new section 9.2.5.
Mr. Grant, do you have anything to comment as chair of the Regulation Subcommittee?
No, I agree with the city attorney, as they proposed it.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? Seeing none, this is a public hearing, so if anybody from the audience would like to come up and speak, please come on up. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Again, I would like to hear a motion in the affirmative to approve as submitted.
Mr.
No,
Chair.
I don't think that's actually right. I think actually,
Yep. May I make a suggestion?
yeah, go ahead.
Someone should make a motion that the section 10.1.4 shall become section 9.2.5 with the following language: approval of location. The zoning board of appeals shall determine whether a proposed junkyard location is suitable, and that would be the motion.
Okay, thank you for that. Do we have a motion? I think, rather than trying to say that word for word, I think someone could just,
I make a motion to approve to change 10.1.4 to 9.2.5 with the wording, approval of location. The zoning board of appeals shall determine whether a proposed junkyard location is suitable. In considering such application, the board shall take into account the nature and development of surrounding properties, the proximity of churches, schools, hospitals, public buildings, or other places of public gathering, the sufficiency in numbers of other such yards and businesses in the vicinity, whether or not the location is within a restricted district, the health, safety, and general welfare of the public, and the suitability of the application to establish, main, or operate such yard or business and receive a license therefore.
And just for the record, that language remains the same. That's what we currently have,
Yep.
that second portion.
thank you. So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Under new business, we have 236 Cherry Street, -16 Raw Street, Zone R5, petition of Thomas Lynch, requesting if he can pursue a change of zone without submitting an application for special permit site plan review per 10.1.2 of the zoning regulations.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, and members of the board. Just for the record, my name is Thomas Lynch. I'm an attorney with the law firm of Lynch, Trimbecki, and Boynton. My office is located here in Milford at 63 Cherry Street. And I'm here tonight with my client, Lorenzo Condiati, who's a principal of Russell Speeder Car Wash. I believe you're familiar with my client's location at 263 Cherry Street. And we're before you with a request similar to the request that you heard last month presented relative to the property at 990 Naugatuck Avenue. We have a similar situation here, but dissimilar in the sense that I believe on that application, the applicant was basically asking for permission to bring in a site plan, a change of zone application without a site plan. In our case, we actually have a completed site plan that Ron Wassmer of Connecticut Civil Group has put together. It was submitted to the zoning office. David has already reviewed the site plan. Based upon his review, there's a number of items on the property currently existing and as part of the proposed expansion of the property that renders it zoning non-compliant. And under section 10.1.2 of our zoning regulations, when an applicant comes in for an application for a change of zone, we actually have to simultaneously submit a site plan that is zoning compliant. So it's sort of a catch-22 situation. And without going into the details of the application itself, My client has operated their car wash on this site for some 27 years. The property at 263 Cherry Street is located in the CDD1 zone. It's the commercial corridor zone throughout the post road and extending onto Cherry Street. And my clients are under contract to purchase the property adjacent to their site located at 16 Ross Street. 16 Ross Street is located in the R5 zone. So we're going to be requesting a change of the zone classification for 16 Ross Street to extend the CDD1 zone line to encompass that property. And just as an aside, the next property, if you've driven down Ross Street, you see that there's a vacant lot that's there. There was a single-family residence on that site, and the property owners across the street, the Shoreline Dental Group, have bought that property and taken the house down, and I believe at this point they're using it for some overflow parking, which may or may not be conducive to the zoning regulations. But I just offer that as a sort of a fact that sort of alleviates some of the concerns that would normally come about when you extend a zone line back into a residential zone because of the fact that the residence at 20 Ross Street has now been eliminated. But upon David's review of the site plan, there's a number of buffer variances that will be necessary if this goes forward. So in my discussions with David, basically the game plan is to request from this board the opportunity to apply for a change of zone classification, then go to the Zoning Board of Appeals to seek variances of the buffer requirements. If those are granted, we would then come back before you with a site plan application, and it's sort of a circuitous route, but under our current zoning regulations, as I mentioned specifically 10.1.2, this is the route that we need to go because of the variances that are needed in the CDD1 regulations that don't comply to 16 Ross Street at this point. So with that said, I would just like to stress that my client has been operating their business here for a long time. They want to expand the business. One of the concerns on Cherry Street has been a public health and safety factor. I believe if you're familiar with the area, especially during the winter months, cars are backed up from the site going down Cherry Street, creating a traffic problem. It actually creates a situation where they have to keep Ross Street an area so the cars can come in and out of Ross Street. And with this expansion, it would allow a driveway that would accommodate more than 12 cars off of the site, which actually, cars coming in from off of the site, which actually exceeds the number that's required for a car wash under our zoning regulations. One other note is that right now on the property, they are doing car detailing. That particular element of the business is going to be eliminated to allow for the longer driveway for the cars to come in for the car wash. So that's the sum of our request. I'm happy to answer any questions if there's any particulars that you might have. As I said, we do have a site plan. It's been put together already, so it's not just a conceptual plan. We have a plan that's already been put together and reviewed by David.
Thank you. Are there any questions from the board? Mr. Sadie.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Lynch. One thing I did note, and I just want to make sure we're clear, there's not a problem on the agenda. The agenda lists the wrong address. I don't know if you noticed that.
I didn't.
236.
It's 263 Cherry Street.
236 Cherry's listed on the agenda unless it got changed.
I see it's,
Yeah,
now
okay.
I see it's on the agenda, but the property address is 263.
So a couple of questions I have, and thank you for the presentation, and it's accurate that there was some substantial dissimilarities. For example, they came in with all the maps that they were talking about. You've indicated a site plan map has been presented to the city planner's office.
Yes.
It's just not in front of us tonight. Is that
That's correct.
available for us to see it, in your opinion?
It's part of the zoning file, I believe. I have a copy with me. It's my only copy. But keep in mind, the request here tonight is just to have the permission to come in for the change of zone application, which I would file immediately. And as part of that presentation, even though we are not going to submit it as part of the application, I was going to do a full presentation so that you wouldn't be just voting on something blindly as to what we wanted to do. And again, with my discussions with David, any application for the change of zone would be conditional upon adherence to this site plan and conditional upon getting the variances from the zoning board of appeals.
Thank you. I have two additional questions then. I understand we don't have a map to see, but approximate square footage of the property on Ross Street is how much, please?
It's not very large. The zone classification is R5, and it's got a frontage on Ross Street of 66 feet and depth of 85, so roughly just about 5,000 square feet.
And then the last question I had, reference to the traffic issues. Could you expand a little bit more about what the plan is to change you mentioned 12 cars. Is it going to be 13 cars? Do you have any conceptual idea of how that's going to change?
I think with this plan, there'll be some 6 additional cars that'll be allowed to get in line on the property in excess of what's there now. I have to tell you, what's there now, David will smirk as I say this, nothing on there is zoning compliant. I mean, this was built, I don't know whether they got site plan approval. I know the Rogers family back into the 60s and 70s owned that property. I think that was part of their auto body shop, so that you know, we're dealing with an existing site, but now because we want to expand and go on to another site, rightfully so, the nonconformities have to be addressed.
Thank you.
Ms. Grant?
You mentioned something you'd have to go to the Board of Appeals to get some variances for buffers.
For the
and-
buffers, yeah.
And setbacks? Can you get an idea of what those are?
And the setbacks, correct, for the existing structure.
For the existing structure only?
Yeah. There's no planned structure on the development of 16 Ross. It's going to be bringing the driveway through. There may be some additional vacuum canisters on that site, but there won't be a structure on there. And again, if you're familiar with the site, right now they have a shed where people wait to have their cars detailed, and then there's the car detailing area that's right near the entrance into the car wash. That's all going to be eliminated. So I think it's going to be an improvement to the site, clearly.
Any other questions or comments? Just to make it very clear, we're not approving a zone change here. We are just allowing for them to set a meeting and a public hearing so that these details can be discussed with the public and with the board, and it'll give them a chance to see if they get the variances, not to make it a viable project. So again, we're just allowing a public hearing rather than approving a zone change at this point. So that being said, Mr. Solkis, would you care to comment?
Everything that Mr. Lynch said was correct. And there's really nothing I can add unless you have a question about anything Mr. Lynch said. But you know, in a nutshell, he presented me with a site plan that doesn't conform with anything. He's in a catch-22. He can't go to the Zoning Board of Appeals and ask for variances for a zone that doesn't exist. So he can't ask for CDD2 zone standards or waiving that, you know, for an R5 zone. So he would first need to get the zone changed so he could then approach the Zoning Board of Appeals. And if the Zoning Board of Appeals doesn't grant them the variances, then you're not going to see this again, because without the variances, it can't move forward, and it needs a lot of variances.
Thank you. Anything further from the board? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve 263 Cherry Street to pursue a change of zone without submitting an application
For a site plan.
for site plan.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor? Opposed? Let's call the roll.
Mr. Grant,
For the motion.
Mr. Moore,
For the motion?
Mr. Marlowe,
For the motion.
Mr. Pansetta,
For the motion.
Ms. Doucette Janice,
Against the motion.
Mr. Sadi,
Against the motion?
Ms. Kearney.
For the motion.
For the motion.
Oh, sorry, Jim.
So it passes. The motion passes.
All right, thank you.
We have, next on the agenda is liaison reports. Do we have any? None. Regulation Subcommittee,
Nothing at this time.
approval of the minutes. Do we have a motion? In favor? Opposed? None. Chair's report, to follow up from last meeting, I'd look for volunteers to work on the update of our plan of conservation and development. Mr. Grant,
I'd be,
anyone else? Okay, we have Ms. Kearney and Mr. Sadi. Okay, we have a committee. I will volunteer as well. That's all I have. Staff report?
I was contacted by our Community Development Director, Julie Nash, and she has floated the idea that she wants to bring this before the board for discussion for a moratorium on further development of self-storage facilities. So if that's something the board would like to have her come in and discuss with you, if you're open to that, we would schedule that, she would make that presentation. What that would mean is if the board was in agreement and you wanted to have a moratorium, then we would have to sort of define how long that moratorium would be for, and usually you would have to state the purpose of the moratorium, which would be to, if you were to do this, probably look at our regulations and figure out places where it would be appropriate, which is probably places where it already exists, and places where you wouldn't want that use. But she expressed an interest in coming before you to, ask, and in doing that, we would set up a public hearing, because it should be a public hearing ultimately to discuss the moratorium if it moves that way. So,
So would the public hearing be the same time, or would you say you would have her come in and do a presentation if we looked at it favorably, then to have a public hearing? Or would you do it all
Yes.
the same day?
I wouldn't do it all the same day, because you need to make a determination as to whether or not unless you tell me tonight, oh yeah, let's explore this, then I would schedule a public hearing. But if you want to hear about it further from her, then I think you should hear that, and at that point decide, oh, there's some validity to this, or it's something you're not interested in. And if it's something the board is interested in pursuing, then we would set a public hearing. And for the public hearing, we would, have some, language prepared for the actual moratorium, which is sort of treated like a temporary regulation. It would go into our book with an effective date and a date that it sunsets.
Does anybody on the board have any feelings either way about whether we...
I'd like to hear what she says.
I agree fully with the other members of the board. I just, being new to the board, I'd like to have something in writing so we can review it to some extent. It doesn't have to be a large report, just to be aware of what's going on when she comes here.
So your request is that part of her presentation be given to us in advance, that we could read it?
If it's available, correct.
So I would say that if you would make that a condition on her coming in, give us some kind of a synopsis up front so we get a general sense. She can maybe elaborate. She doesn't
Yes.
need to write the entire thing down, but to give us some reference and some perspective.
Yes.
Great. Everybody okay with that? All right, and that's what we'll do. Staff, anything else for staff report?
Nothing else this evening.
All right, thank you. Hear a motion to adjourn?